Hello and welcome to the Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Richie in the sun, and I feel like crap today, so bear with me as I both squint and look at the camera as well as sound like a foreign individual for those who are loyal fans of the show. I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening. Over that away, we have DZ representing his Los Angeles Chargers. Down directly below me here, representing the Raiders, is Monsieur Jack Kenna. And I see some familiar faces here in the Chitty Chat. I'd like to thank all of you who are joining us here and getting involved in the show. Today's show is going to be an interesting one, a bit of a new concept, actually, which is going to be the three toughest matchups that we believe is on our schedules. We may have hinted at tough matchups, but not like the toughest and why. So this is an opportunity for us to get into, a little bit more detail on those particular matchups, why we think they're going to be so tough. And I'm assuming that, when we give toughest matchups, that the vast majority of them, we believe, at least in most instances, will likely result in a loss for our team. And I think that that'll be something to to bring forward and whatnot. So with that in mind, let's go one match for all of us, and we'll just do kind of a round table here, and then we'll go through kind of 1, 2, 3, round 1, round 2, round 3, and then we'll cap off the show there. So I'll actually go first for my Denver Broncos. And I'm just going to start with the toughest match that I believe is on our schedule, and I don't even think it's particularly close. And that is going to be our matchup against the Eagles.
That's your third one.
I think that's the toughest one on their schedule. I think that the Eagles are going to be the toughest matchup for us. I don't believe they lost enough to bring them down from their Super Bowl, victory lap. I think they kept the majority of their team. I think they've even brought in some additional guys to kind of help bolster kind of, some folks they lost and things like that. And, they are still an incredibly formidable opponent. And so even with tape, even with film, even with all of that stuff and the tough schedule and, insert A, B, C, D, E, F here, they are still the Eagles. They are still one heck of a roster, and they have a deep rotation at the vast majority of their position groups.
Yes.
And I actually don't think that it's so much that my Denver Broncos are so ill-equipped to kind of maybe compete with someone like the Eagles. I think it's going to be a more competitive game than I think a lot of people are going to give it credit for. That being said, though, I simply think that the Eagles' depth in the most important positions on the team is just a bridge too far. I just think it's going to be a bridge too far. I think their offensive line is too good and too deep. I think that they are more aggressive than what my Broncos are used to going up against. They also have size and speed as a combination on their roster on the offensive line side of the ball, which is a challenge in and of itself. And then, of course, you move over to the defensive line. Maybe the best in all football, like, might not even be close, right? Like, their defensive line is unreal.
It's up there, yeah. If it's not the best, it's, in the top 2, top 3.
Yeah. And I just think that when you have a constant rotation of above average and even elite level guys, which they do, I just think that really puts you at a disadvantage. I really do.
I agree. I think your team's probably is one of the best matchups for them, and that is going to be definitely a go-to watch game. And you're right. Your defense, their defense. I mean, it's 1A, 1B. In my opinion, your Broncos defense is that good. Your offensive line's really good too. Where I kind of see some of the differences is the skilled positions. On the Eagles, they got 2 outstanding wide receivers. They can run the ball as well behind that offensive line, which I think is the best offensive line in all of football. but I would say probably out of any team, I think your team has the best shot in taking them.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Yes and
There's
no.
I don't want to give away too much on the Eagles because they're on my list as well. Surpriser, right? Surprise, surprise.
Same.
But the Eagles, like Bronco matchup, I don't know. That might be it might be a game for a half or 3/4. Now the thing is, what the Eagles do is they run the ball. It's like some absurd amount of percentage of the time they run the ball comparing to throw. And then what do we project that the Broncos defense is going to be really strong at? That's secondary, right? So there's going to be a lot of probably stacked boxes.
Linebackers too.
And then, Jalen will try to run out, which, look, Denver's got a really good edge, some really good edges and linebackers and such. But, that's where I see that game kind of getting taken over.
Yep.
That part. If they carry the 2024, playbook into 25, which I don't see any reason why they wouldn't, but they're on my list as well. Probably the toughest matchup for the Chargers as well, in my opinion.
And Richie, are you home or away?
I don't care. Like, I just don't. Like, I think we're away, but to be quite honest, I would have us losing that game either way.
I mean,
Plus,
you want to go?
They do run the ball.
Give me,
You got
I'll quickly look it up. But
do you want to go in more in depth on this on your Eagles matchup, Richie? Because I could piggyback off this as well.
Yeah, I just want to go just a little bit
Sure.
into it, just a titch more. So, Jack, you made a couple comments about the Broncos' offensive line and all this other kind of stuff, and as they say, flattery will get you everywhere, except not with me. Is the problem I have with the Broncos' offensive line is we showed a bunch of weaknesses over the course of the 2024 season on the offensive line. And so, for example, we ran the ball really well at the beginning part of the season, and then we started to really, in the words of the Adam Sandler movies, we suck again in the run game, and we did not do very well in terms of moving guys off the ball, getting those rush yards, and that sort of thing. And I think that's a bit of an issue for us, and maybe an issue for us. Oh, I agree, Raiders. I agree, but I'm specifically looking at the head-to-head matchups. So, for example, DZ, you sort of hinted at it earlier there, and where I'm looking at it is where the Eagles are strong, my Broncos are actually weak in some regards. So, my offensive line, for example, did well, but we didn't do well moving kind of big, strong guys off the ball to get rush yards.
They're a lighter
And what are the Eagles
unit. Yeah.
Well, they're lighter on the offensive line, and they're somewhat lighter on the defensive line. And then the problem that you end up with is that you get these big, strong dudes like the Eagles have on their defensive line, and all of a sudden you're kind of at a disadvantage in terms of trying to get that run game going and that sort of thing. And so that's a challenge. Okay, cool. So that's why I'm looking at this. Is like, I don't care where we're away, it's away. Like, we're playing at the Eagles. We're not at home. So we don't even have mile high advantage in terms of the thin air there.
That's why I was asking that question.
In addition to that, the Eagles have a big, strong offensive line. And my defensive line is more of a smaller speed type D line, which did very well for us last year. Don't get me wrong. The D line for the Broncos killed it last year and did very well. And I suspect we're going to have more of the same, if not even a better defensive line this year. But again, it's who you're going up against. It is what does your opponent have, and how do you match up against that opponent? And I just think that when you look A to A, B to B, and you kind of go through those kind of core and main matchups. If you don't have time to throw, you're not going to be able to throw. Who I actually believe, I actually like my Broncos wide receiver room. As I
Yeah,
look at kind of matchups and stuff,
it's a good
I actually
room.
really do. Like, I really, really like the Broncos wide receiver room, and I do actually really like my running back room. Right, I actually think the running
Mhm.
back room now is excellent. I think the wide receiver room is excellent. I think we got some competent tight
Tight end
ends
room.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're like we've made some major
Quarterbacks on the
moves.
rise.
Yeah, we've made some major moves forward. It's all for naught if your quarterback doesn't have the time to throw, because if his offensive line can't hold back the defensive line, what the heck's the matter, right? Like, just stop it. Just
Bingo.
no, I don't. It just does not matter. And then on the
Yep.
flip side of that, if your defensive line can't break through their offensive line and force pressures, etc., on their quarterback, you're at a disadvantage on that side of the ball as well. And so it's for those reasons why, despite all of the benefits and things that we've done here in the offseason, what my Broncos have not really done, and you can I made comments about this like 2-3 shows now in a row almost. We did not add the size speed combination, and I've been pounding that table for so long. The only dude that's got that interesting blend of size and speed is Clay Webb at the center or guard position. He's a little bit bigger. He's got the strength. He's got that anger that he plays with. Quinn Miners, again, he's that mold as well.
And I see it for all. Since the Eagles are on all three of our lists, I think we're all seeing the same issues
Oh, you
with
guys
the
got him
Eagles.
too, Jack? All right. That's
Oh yeah, yeah. We got them at week 15, and we're away too.
nice. Well, yeah, Richie, it's gonna be interesting. I mean, who knows? Sometimes these teams have what do they call it? The Super Bowl hangover. You never know. Like, I mean, I think I've already said this. I've got them as a lock in the NFC. I mean, they're the best team heading into this season in the NFC, in my opinion. With you could sprinkle in the Rams, the Commanders, the Lions, and some other teams in there. But it's going to be tough. I mean, they went 14-3 last season. Um, really good team. I mean, what they did to Kansas City, they beat them down 40-22 in that Super Bowl.
I mean, it wasn't even close. I mean, it's like KC doesn't normally get beat down, and that was a beat down. So it's like they are definitely the scariest team in the NFL, and just their depth. Their depth is like, even like I'm looking at it, in week 15. Okay, if some guys go down, but they're just deep. They can just kind of put the next guy up, and it seems like they don't. It doesn't change for them.
I mean,
They
I
just
think
keep plugging away.
they're favored right now, like plus 1,200 to repeat for the Super Bowl. Those I think might be the highest odds any team's got right now. I don't know if you've seen anything else, Jack.
Oh, I haven't looked at the. I thought they were like to repeat up there. They're like 650, something like that.
What I saw today was plus 1,200. Now, who knows if that site's
Let me
accurate
take
or
a look.
not? I did a little bit of homework before the show or earlier today, looking at some of these teams because, you know, the Eagles are on mine. I mean, we got them. I mean, I just roll into it, Richie. You know, for the Chargers, um, we have Week 12 bye. It was really difficult to pick out just 3 games, to be honest with you guys, because there's a lot of difficult stretches in this season for my team, as for the Chargers. But I had to narrow it down to the later half of the season. After the Week 12 bye, we go right into a divisional game with the Raiders, which is going to be very tough. Okay, and then right after that divisional game, we have a Monday night against the Eagles, and it's in LA. But I know, Jack, you're asking where these games go. In my opinion, the Eagles fans are one of the few fan bases that travel really well no matter where they go. I think it's that Kelly green or whatever they wear that shows up in every stadium. They've got a really diehard fan base. Them and
Definitely
the
sticks
Steelers.
out.
Something about the state of Pennsylvania, their fans really travel well, in my opinion. Richie kind of talked a lot about the Eagles, their depth and whatnot. We talked about how they really beat down the team that we're trying to topple as the Kansas City Chiefs. They really embarrassed them. And it was nice to see. I'm not a fan of the Eagles, by the way. I don't like their fans at all. I think they're rude. I think they're just a downright dirty fan base, in my opinion. I'm not saying all of them, but they remind me of the Raiders from a couple decades ago, to be honest with you. The Raiders fan base. I don't know how you feel about that, Jack. They were last year.
They're brutal. They do kind of remind me of some throwbacks. Oh, and by the way, the Eagles are plus 650.
Okay,
I just looked it up.
Okay, thanks.
And they're the top in NFL next year.
And the thing is, another aspect about the Eagles is, Vic Fangio's their D coordinator, who knows all about all our teams. Even though we've changed it up since a little bit, and then Kellen Moore is their OC. Kellen Moore was with the Chargers for a year, so there's some familiarity within their team playing against us, which they don't need help. But
No.
they were number 2 last year in opponents' points per game, and I think that was 17.8. Chargers were number 1, and that had to do with our schedule. That's 17.7, but if they carry that in, that just makes it even, that much tougher to score on this team, right? That's a pretty low score, 17.8 points on average. And they were kind of what I said to Richie, how his matchup with his team, they are a big time rush team, with Hurts and Barkley. They'll run that ball on you. They're going to run, and at 4th and short, they're going for it. They got the tush push or whatever that other nickname is they got in Philly. I haven't seen anybody stop it. Now, I'm sure there's teams that stop it, but I haven't seen it. In my opinion, that looked like more of a rugby play than a football play. In my opinion, I think it should have been taken out, but.
Yeah, but that's a very Belichick thing. That's a very Belichick thing to do, right? Like the Eagles and that play and the style and what it means. It's very much like what Bill used to do, and these are what successful teams in the NFL do, right? Is they find a strength of their team or a weakness on the opponent. Pick your poison and how you want to word it, whatever, right? Yeah. And then what you do.
Poor dogs.
Love you, Dad.
And it doesn't hurt that their quarterback can squat 700 pounds. You know what I mean? So I don't think many other quarterbacks are squatting that much weight. So
sorry, what I was saying before my dogs tried to attack each other was they found a weakness. First off, they found a gap in the rules.
Yeah.
That allows them to leverage a strength of their football team. And have mastered it as a play in their playbook. And there's really nothing about the tush push or what it represents or anything like that. There's nothing in it that is inherently not good or illegal. It's just, it's one of those plays that's kind of in that gray zone. And it's like, okay, well, like, for example, here's another one, right? Like you often see like a fullback or a lineman pushing a guy over the goal line in that last little bit to try to succeed or win or whatever. Okay, cool. Well, does that mean those are all illegal too?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Good call.
Like there's like as much as we're looking at it saying, I'm not so sure about that. It's like, well, okay, cool, but like the offensive players that kind of get behind one another we just need to be mindful of, like, when you outlaw one thing, you can outlaw multiple things, and it could have negative consequences to the
Sure. I
overall
mean,
game itself.
we can
And
go.
you even think of it like when let's say a guy gets down the field and he's trying to get a couple more yards, and you see those big scrums where both sides are pushing. It's like, okay, well, is that going to have to go away? Because you know what? It's getting pushed down the field. So what if it's at the goal line? I like the tush push rule. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it. I'm surprised it was even voted on. I mean, just because the Eagles are good and they're very successful at it, and it makes it harder. So that's what your defensive coordinators are paid for. Figure it out.
Matt brings up an interesting thing, and we could debate this forever. But if the defense could do the same as offense, there wouldn't be a problem. I mean, we've seen, as us fans, we've seen, in the last couple of decades, them hamstringing the defensive players. It seems like every other year they come out with some rule that kind of seems like it benefits the offense even more so. So, in my opinion, like, yeah, I get what Richie's saying. It's a gray area, but how much more of an advantage you're going to give the offense? We want these games to be 40-40 or something, 40-45 at the end. It's just, I'm not a fan. Look,
I'm sure the NFL does.
I'm sure, yeah, they do. I bet you. And I bet you the younger crowd likes it, and fantasy guys love it, Personally, I don't care for it. I think it's, like I said, I don't have as much rugby experience as Richie does, but I did play rugby for a while, and that reminds me of a rugby play. And last time I checked, they're two different sports. But look, it's a gray area, and obviously didn't get shut down at the ownership meetings, and so you got to figure out a way to stop it, or just have a plan for it. But
well, it's also rugby play though is the long pass, or what is often referred to as direct snap, or like a long lateral, or again, you can refer to it whatever way you want.
Sure.
And that's also a rugby play, right? Like, you got the the backs kind of doing a long lateral to the backers on the wing, or the wingman on the outside, right? And it's a common rugby play to kind of go from center to wide left or wide right.
Yeah.
And so I guess what my point here is that NFL is going to take from any sport that it feels can make the product on the field better. At the end of the day, one of the key elements of the NFL is entertainment, right?
They are a registered
And
entertainment
they are
industry.
a registered entertainment industry, not necessarily a sports
Right.
industry. And I think a lot of people, a lot of fans, they forget that fact, right?
Yeah.
And so part of this is putting the best possible entertainment product on the field. And so the question is do you want to see these slugfests, or do you want to see like the zip and zing? And a lot of younger fans are liking zip and zing, unfortunately.
I don't understand why we just can't mesh them both, man. Like,
I agree. I completely agree. Like, here's an example, right?
Expand the rosters.
So here's an example. Here's a great one, actually. Do you remember the Rams and Patriots game from, like, what, 10 years ago, give or take?
But was this the greatest show on turf?
No. It was more
kind of at the end of it, and
I'm not getting it. No bells are ringing.
Basically, it was like a 10-6 game, or like a 7-3 game, or something like that. It was in the playoffs, and it was right near the tail end of Belichick's kind of like reign over the NFL, if you will. It was kind of in that kind of latter part there, just before he kind of teetered off, and then eventually, was shown the door. But what he brought back was like old school NFL football. Like, not just like, hey, this is like back in the day, but like, I mean, he brought back like the 22 personnel sets. So he brought back in 2 running backs, 2 tight ends. So if I don't know how familiar you are, everyone is with like the descriptions of the sets of the players and formations and stuff. He brought back in like the power I formation. No. He brought back in the 22 formation. in the 23 formation. So what he was
Yeah,
doing
because
was
we
he was
don't ever
putting on
see split backs really that much, especially
no,
with twin tight ends set.
no.
Yeah.
So he was bringing back 2 tight ends and 2 running backs and like 1 wideout. And then he also then brought in other plays where he had 3 tight ends, 2 running backs. Like he was bringing in old school sets like back from like the 50s and the 60s, and even like basically the Leatherheads. And everyone was just like, "What is this? I don't understand." And then of course then you have the Patriot homers, and in some regards I think they were probably correct. Only Bill Belichick does stuff like that. Like literally only Bill Belichick says, I know what I'm going to do. The entire league is going passing game, and I'm going to go right back, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to put in these like absolutely insanely old sets. Like, you know what I mean? Like insanely old sets that no one's ever seen before, and the NFL is now ill-equipped to stop.
I like that you brought that up because we're seeing this right now. We're on this roller coaster, and we've talked about this many times about how the running game is now getting back to where we used to see it, where it was prioritized, to some sense, right? Especially with King Henry and Saquon Barkley and some of these guys like that. And what we're seeing on the other side of the ball is, these linebackers are becoming more important. These D linemen, Philly, case in point with them. And then for a long time, the NFL was transitioning safeties into linebackers, these lighter, faster kind of thumpers. And it works, but I think that you're going to start seeing these more prototypical linebackers, these bigger size guys. And guys are getting more athletic, so I think it can happen. The other day, real quick, I was watching it was like the Bengals and somebody else. It was like a 2009 game. And, not long ago, I have a 2009 Toyota, right? So it's old, but I still have it. And I was looking at it and I'm like, wow, this looks so much different than today's game. And I looked at it, just looking at the linebackers. The linebackers were massive. They look like D linemen. They're huge. And I was like, and now you look at the linebackers and they're that hybrid safety cornerback kind of, build to them. So I think you're gonna see like teams carry like different styles of players, and I'm hoping they expand the roster, to be honest with you, because I think we see some more competitive stuff with that.
You're seeing a lot more linebackers, being carried on a team for exactly what you said, DZ, because you need these different guys. Not only do you need them for special teams, especially with the way the rules are nowadays, but you got to be able to switch it up because, man, if you're going against like a Derrick Henry, I mean, we said this a million times on the show. That guy is a defensive end playing running back.
Right.
So when you get these guys, again, smaller, tweeners between a strong safety and a linebacker, and they're weighing like 220. I mean, the running backs are almost as big. They're out there, for speed, sideline to sideline, versus plugging the holes and just straight smash mouth football.
Yeah.
And I would actually, I agree with you on that too. I would like to see the rosters get expanded.
It's going to get interesting because, like some people in the comments have said, everybody was getting smaller on that secondary side, and then it's like everybody's going to play catch up, right? With, the offense is getting faster, more explosive, so the defense had to get faster and smaller and, to combat that. And it's like, it's going to be interesting to see who can take the next step, like who can match each other. But what we're seeing is these guys coming out, man, out of the draft these last few years, they are mutants. They are gifted. The size and speed is unreal.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think what you're seeing now is the hybrid of both of them, which is like 6'3", 245, but can run a 4.3. And you're just like, okay, dude, what lab were you grown in?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, no doubt about that. And you look at the Eagles, since we're talking Eagles, when you get a Saquon Barkley, he's like 225. I mean, he's bigger than some of the linebackers that are out there right now. So it's a pure mismatch. And same thing, the guy can run, he's powerful. So creating those mismatches.
Dude is chiseled. He's
But-
like
but-
cut
but-
from granite.
Yeah, but it's also the tight ends as well.
Man.
So the thing that who was the first one to do it? Bill Belichick was kind of an early adopter of it, but then other teams kind of caught on and kind of picked up. And frankly, actually, Pete Carroll was an early adopter of this style as well, which was he wanted his DBs taller and bigger
Mhm.
than most other teams did.
Yeah.
And the reason why he did
Yeah.
that and why he wanted that as a build and what have you was for to cover the tight ends and to be competitive against tight end heavy sets and tight end passes and all that sort of thing. And so what he wanted was he wanted his safeties and his corners to be, 6'2", 6'3". Why? Because then there wasn't this massive mismatch in terms of height and our wingspan between the defensive backs and the tight ends that were becoming more and more prevalent in the NFL. So look at
Agent
Travis
of Boom.
Kelce. We'll look at Travis Kelce as an example. So he runs routes very similar to like a wide receiver because he's got the Julian Edelman, Travis Kelce quarterback mentality, right?
He's got
Cool.
that savviness. Yeah.
Right? The savviness. Okay, cool, no problem. But then the problem is he's also like 6'4" and like 250.
Yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
how do you combat somebody like that? Well, Kelsey's not the fastest guy, but he's got the smarts. Okay, well, the way you combat that is with a corner or a safety, depending on, where you're at,
Yeah.
who is 6'2", 6'3". Well, that's like that much shorter than Kelsey. Wingspan is almost the same. So then all you need is just a dude that can barely or basically catch up. And that's
Yeah.
it. And
Sure.
so you're going to generally get that with a guy that is like a Richard Sherman, for example. I'm just going to pick a guy that, we all know,
Sure.
or a Cam
Cam
Chancellor.
Chancellor.
Or a Cam Chancellor, exactly. So you're going to get that with guys like that, right? And I think that makes a ton of sense as to why Pete Carroll moved in that direction. And I think it all lines up with why that defense was also, pretty darn good, right?
Yeah.
Like they
and,
were.
and that's exactly what he's doing right now. I mean, you just look at the draft they had. I mean, Porter 6'3", runs a 4.30 40. As a safety, brought over Jeremy Chin. He's 6'3", like 236. So you can see, what they're targeting is going back to that route to go for what you just said, Richie. That's the way the league's going because these tight ends are getting huge. I just remember when Darren Waller was on a team, he was 6'7", like 245. But
Darren Waller's only 6'3", I think.
6'3".
Yeah.
I thought he was 6'7". I don't know. Raider Nation, you've got to have a bunch of my brothers in the chat. And by the way, salute to all my Raider brother fans out there. How tall was Darren Waller?
Is he 6'7"? There's no way.
6'6".
Oh,
Six.
close.
You're right. Okay, he was just light. All right. My bad. Because the reason why when you said that, it perked it up because Darren Waller's name has been, it's back. He's back in the news, right?
Yeah. I guess his music career didn't go so well. So he's got to go play football again.
Yeah, man. He's gonna. I was kind of laughing about it, but what Miami's kind of doing it down in Miami, right down in Florida. They're building a speedy little offense, man, and it's going to be tough for, they're going to be mismatches for some of these slower built teams, in my opinion.
Well, that,
Just don't.
and DZ, that's one of the things that was a big rumor, for Raider Nation was they were talking about Michael Mayers, Miami wanting to get a hold of him to go over there after they did the trade.
Yeah, I've been hearing his name tossed around a little bit.
But that's all dead in the water. He ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, Waller injured. That's interesting. That's interesting. That guy was like so set on being retired, and then, like everybody said, he must needed that money. So we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out.
Well,
Yeah,
he also wanted to go
what
to a
version
state
they're
that
going to
had
get.
low tax rates.
Yeah, good point. But I think he has to have a home there, which I'm sure he will.
I mean, when he went to the Giants, yeah, he like his heart wasn't in the game anymore. So I'm just wondering what version of Waller they're going to get. The Vegas Waller,
Well, he's
which
going to be hungry.
was on the money.
Yeah, he's going on a payday. No, he's going on a payday. So he's coming back for a bag. So he's going to come back and he's going to look good again, I think. And I think he's looking for that one last big payday to top up the bank account.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, after he got his divorce, rap career didn't work. I'm sure he probably needs it at this point.
Yeah.
So the other thing I thought was interesting with the Eagles too is that their defense. And I didn't know this, DZ. Your Chargers gave up the least amount of points.
Yeah.
Last year, and the Eagles were only 2 points behind. So I mean, that defense. You look at the differential. It was like 140 some odd point differential between what their offense scores and what their defense gives up. So you got a potent offense, you got a potent defense. That's why they're the Super Bowl champs. So they're just sick, man.
And they've got a great duo at wide receiver, man.
They do. That's why I said, their weapons. They got the weapons, and they're just deep and rotating. They're big and strong, and just totally the most complete team in the NFL right now.
My hat's off to their GM. First and foremost, like
absolutely,
I think and not to really discredit, I think it's Sirianni. I think you can put really any of the coaches in the NFL and head coach, coach that team and do really well with them. I think they're like what's that term where it's like a key ready or whatever, like I forget what that term is when you get a
turnkey
car.
Ready.
Yeah, turnkey ready. Like, I really think, if Sirianni does something stupid, they could fire him, insert somebody else, and, pick up right where they left off. That GM is, stacks so much talent. And like you were saying, Jack, depth, but, their division's getting tougher. Commanders, are on the rise. And so we'll see. It'll be some better competition for them.
Well, I'm trying to remember the guy's name. The Raiders also got somebody from, was it something Brian, I think? Or am I thinking of Brian Stark from the Broncos? But I know they picked up somebody from their scouting department from the Eagles who was his right-hand man. So I'm looking forward, to, come in the building and, it seems like all their picks seem to hit. So I'm just thinking at some point in time, get that same type of depth. I'm crossing my fingers for it.
Good point, Jack. Yeah, man. I mean, it's scouting. It's the whole front office, man. But so I'm assuming that's your toughest as well, right, Jack?
Yeah, I would say it's their toughest. So yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, well, they earned the right. So
what week do you guys
just respect to them.
15.
We play on week 15.
Okay, and then Richie, you don't know what week you play them? I know we're 14. Week 14. Raiders had said 2 of the Eagles scouts.
Yeah, I forgot the guy's name. But again, he was supposed to be the right-hand man for their general manager.
Seems like everything's on the up and up in Vegas, man. It's just going to take some time.
Yep. Absolutely. That's my boy Europe.
So the question's actually going to be if so the last few years we've seen more and more of Mark Davis be kind of more present. And when the Raiders were doing well, Mark Davis was more of a background guy. Like when the records were better, and this was kind of back in the Derek Carr days. So I actually wonder if we're going to start seeing Davis kind of go back to that kind of executive owner style role as opposed to being as hands-on as he has been.
He's been pretty much hands off for the most part because he doesn't really know what he's doing. He's always trying to find those people to surround him. And that's like kind of one of the things when Tom Brady kind of jumped on board, he knows the football end and probably knows like the guys that are well respected in the league, to kind of help him out. Like I'm sure Mark knows his part, but he doesn't know it like, a player would know it. Because you just look at when you played rugby and you're going up against a team, the next week, well, who their all-stars are going to be. If you like their coach or not. So, it's definitely a trickle-down effect. And so I think, getting a Tom Brady does not hurt, in the way of those type of connections and his knowledge. And I still don't know what his role is on this team, because he says he stays away, but I think that's a big fib. I think he's more involved than what he puts on for sure. And Matt, you're right. He is a businessman.
I mean,
he is a businessman. He got us to Vegas, so.
Your guys' brand pretty much sells itself, to be honest with you.
Well, like when I was a kid, what sold me was the colors and the logo. Who has as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old little boy doesn't like pirates?
Yeah, man. Pirates are pretty cool.
Yep.
Don't tell Jack that the Buccaneers are a pirate.
Yeah, well, that doesn't go over well with any Raiders fan when you tell them there's another one in the league. So, Jack, let's go reverse order here and get your number 2 in terms of most difficult game of the season.
All right, it's going to be at week 10. And it's going to be against your Denver Broncos.
Ooh.
So again, just looking at what your team has, how it performed. I mean, it seemed like every single guy in that team. I know we're looking up the stats, getting ready for shows. It seems like every single week there was like 4 or 5 sacks. I mean, I wish my team can, get half as many sacks as what your team did. And it just seems again the same thing. Your depth, especially on defense. Like, again, I forget his name, your linebacker that went out early in the season, and then the next guy steps up and plays well. And it seems like even these late round, Singleton, dude, he's a beast, dude. He is a beast. And then, it's like, you look at some of these draft picks that you have, they're late rounders, and they're getting like, 8, 9, 10 sacks. And then you got the best cornerback in the entire league. And he's the only player that I actually was able to see, that he kept Bowers in check. Only player. When they put him on him for the whole game, Bowers only got, 43 yards, no touchdowns. And then I think he had a pick 6 in the game as well, too. I mean, the defense is ferocious and it's scary. And I just looked at my team last year on offense. I mean, we couldn't get over 20 points in a game, and then let alone play, your team and just shutting us down. It was kind of dominant, and I hate to say that. God, I hate to say it because I can't stand your Broncos. But and I just see, and then now again with your quarterback coming along, I will say the weakness of my team, again against anybody, is going to be our secondary. Our secondary is definitely suspect. When Bennett's coming off, who was our best corner, he's coming off an injury, labrum tear. Right now he's practicing with the 2s. And then, they get Porter, who, again, was an offensive wide receiver, and he's got, 7 games under his belt? So that's suspect. And then, I do like Decoria Richardson. He didn't get a lot of run last year. And when he did, again, he was a rookie. So that room is light on experience. And, again, I think Bo Nix, showing that he can, get the ball down the field. And then you get Ingram, Then you get your running backs. And then again, Christian Wilkins, I don't know if he's even going to play this year. It's not looking so hot for that, for sure.
That's gotta hurt.
But, yeah, I mean, that's why I was said, Richie, like your team is the one team, and I see your team as just grown. And I'm not saying that to say it because you're here. I'm just saying that because just seeing what you guys have done, it's definitely impactful. And now you're getting a Baron playing your slot, even on top of that. You know, the highest rated, corner coming out of the draft. Grew up talking Pirates. Oh, the Raider hat. Now, the Pirate. So, but I know what Nab's saying. Nab's a great guy, dude. We talk behind the scenes. I go on his show.
There's got to be a butt in there somewhere.
Yeah, there's got to be a butt.
Jack's favorite pirate was the wenches.
It's definitely not a butt pirate. but yeah, I mean, your team is very.
I think Jack's favorite pirates were the wenches.
The what is?
The wenches?
What's that?
Jack, you don't know what a wench is?
Wenches.
Oh, wenchy. Okay. Yeah.
Wait, what's a wenchy?
Good. I'm a fan of the pirate.
I don't know.
But,
Raider
no,
chat,
wenches,
you guys need
like the pirate, the female,
Jack, man, I thought your pirate knowledge would be a lot higher than it is, dude.
No, don't have that type of pirate knowledge.
All right, so we going into my number 2?
Would you wanted Richie, since we're talking Bron? I said, well, yeah, do that because Richie's going to have something different than me. Never mind.
Oh yeah, we're going reverse. Come on, Jack, pirate hose.
Pirate hose.
That's funny. That's funny, Nav.
Look, everyone else except Jack got exactly what I was saying, and that.
No,
Jack,
I get it. The
your
wenches.
wife is very lucky. Your wife is very lucky that you don't go that direction. So congratulations to her for finding the one dude that's just a straight shooter all the way. So good for her.
You got to get that Nav. You got to get that booty. Oh.
So you had the Broncos. I think that's going to be an interesting matchup, Jack. I just have some additional comments to make there, which is going to be really interesting, actually. So do you know the head-to-head matchup between Peyton and Pete Carroll?
Ooh.
No, I don't.
The Super Bowl?
No. Their record over their careers.
The record.
They played each other several times. So do you know their record against one another?
I don't.
I do.
Oh, this is interesting.
So let me know when you're ready, and I'll disclose.
Yeah, do it.
It's an interest.
I'm sure a lot of people don't know that.
Richie seems like he's gloating right now.
So what?
Pete Carroll is 4 wins to Sean Payton's 1.
Oh, so you were not gloating? Wow.
No. I'm putting facts out there that I think are rather interesting. So
that is
now, Jack. The question is, and this is back when obviously Pete Carroll was in charge of the Legion of Boom, and they basically faced each other in the championship games. And so you're talking a next level defense that was with the Seahawks at that point. So
absolutely.
I think we just need to kind of adjust accordingly. But do you think that your Raiders defense can get there?
I think, they can get there, but I don't think it's going to be this season. I think again, I just said, they're, the corners are weak. The linebackers, they're okay. I mean, they're not great. I like the safety room, and I do like the defensive front. But once you get past the defensive front, then there's big issues. And your
think
team's it's got it all
So my
for that.
yeah. So my comment on you guys is, I think there's a few good players that you have on your defensive front, but I don't think you've built enough depth to build that rotation that allows you to be truly successful. Okay, I think that's fair, and
I think it's
trust
fair.
me. I know I'm saying this with a tremendous number of Raiders fans that are in our chat right now.
Mhm.
But I do think it's a fair comment. I think that with Wilkins likely being out for the year, I think that's a huge blow to your defensive
That's a
line.
huge blow.
massive.
Yeah, he's when healthy, he is a legit player, and I think that he's underrated and undervalued by a lot of people that just don't remember what he was like when he was first playing in your season last year. And so I think that he's an underrated player that you're likely not going to have this year. I just don't think you have the depth on that roster to be that true rotational kind of type team on the defensive front. And I also think that the Raiders are missing a couple pieces simply because you don't know what you don't know yet. There's going to be
Agreed.
one or two guys that you probably have brought in that you hope are going to work out, but probably won't. And that's okay. That's part of the building process, right? Like, that's totally okay. The Chargers are going through it. My Broncos have already gone through it, right? You want to build a certain culture plus skill sets, and sometimes one or the other don't line up. Here's an example. I was the lone Broncos fan, and DZ actually both of you were members of the chat back when I was saying this. I was probably the lone voice in Broncos country that hated Justin Simmons.
Yeah,
And I publicly stated it.
I was confused by it. I was like, no way.
Me too.
Okay. Okay. Now, here's my question. Where is he at now? Is he getting paid massive dollars? Is he some amazing guy that's killing it in the league or any of that
still
kind of
a free
stuff?
agent?
No, he's a free
Yes.
agent.
He's a free agent,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
my point being is that doesn't mean that he's not a good dude. That doesn't mean that he's not a quality football player. It just
He
means
hates
that he's not a
minicamp.
world. He's just
Just
not a
kidding.
world beater. He's not. He's
Yeah.
not someone that's going to be like knocking the doors down. He was Dreamweaver, except here's the deal. Almost every other person that I spoke to in Broncos country was hating on me for making those comments. Every single person. And it's a tough business being right.
We get attached
with
to
those types of
names too
predictions.
easily.
And like the problem that so many in Broncos country had was they loved what the guy did off the field and how he conducted himself. And I am capable of separating out play on field and what he did off the field. Off the field, the guy was exactly the type of dude that you probably want your daughter to marry, right? Like, conducted himself with a certain composure, presented himself well, always polite, always well spoken, all that sort of thing. Involved in the community, all that kind of stuff. Awesome, fantastic. However, play on the field matters. And
we have that same exact guy, Bradley Bozeman, if any Charger fans are in the chat.
Right.
Ugh.
And so the thing is that, okay, well, in a run play, Justin Simmons would take horrible angles to the tackle. I would post pictures and screenshots and all that kind of stuff. And I had so many people just like jump down my throat for making those comments. And I'm like, cool, you think I'm wrong? Then show me how what I'm putting on, like, I'm literally giving an example. So tell me why the examples that I'm giving are wrong. And let's engage with the idea. Let's actually have a dialogue or discussion. And so many people just got butthurt the fact that I was using someone that they liked and saying that he wasn't good, and would never engage in the idea. They would only engage in the ad hominem personal attacks. And that's how you know you're right. When the only thing people can do is come back and actually, insult you as a person, you've already won the argument.
And a quick one. Hey, Matt,
you are correct.
Lockney Toffee is he got moved to the offensive line. He's not playing defensive line.
And so Jack, my point of making the Simmons comment, my point of bringing up some of those other guys like a Justin Simmons, like those guys that are just like really well liked, for example, is you're guaranteed going to have a few guys like that on your roster. You may not
Sure.
even realize who they are right now. And if you are wearing those silver and black goggles and you come around next year and you're shocked that some guy that you really like is getting traded, you could be the naysayers like with the Broncos that were pissed when Simmons got cut. But sometimes it's addition through subtraction. You don't know what you can't see, and sometimes those guys are taking plays off, and sometimes those guys are actually
Business
holding the
decision.
team back.
Well, that was like
Yeah.
Jack Jones. I mean, to like, a lot of people, couldn't see it. And then, of course, when Antonio Pierce calls him out and benches him for like a series because of making business decisions, or I even look at it like, really good players like a Nate Hobbs, but you can't stay on the field. I mean, again, the best ability is your availability.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of, coaches and teams they're targeting. I know the Raiders are looking at that, not looking at guys that are hurt. They may not be as good, but if you can stay healthy, that's a big thing.
Oh, and I don't want to go back necessarily on this, but again, my number one guy to look out in the Eagles game, who I think is going to get absolutely owned, is Garrett Bowles. I think Garrett Bowles is going to be made to look like a fool. He is my number one guy on my Denver Broncos offensive line that is given a ton of credit. Seems like a nice dude. Honestly, his wife and him have some funny banter on X all the time. It's pretty funny. She laughed at him when he fell on ice. So, like, that just is an automatic win for me. I think that's hilarious. But when it comes to certain things, like Justin Simmons as an example, Garrett Bowles is in too valuable a position to just simply cut and move on. You need someone who is equal or more competent at the left tackle position, and the Broncos haven't been able to bring someone in yet to fill that void. But if you're being
There's only
honest,
so many good ones that go around on
Right.
left tackle. Again, if you're not drafting high in the draft, more than likely you're
Right.
not going to find that.
Right. So we've spoken about this before. And what my problem is with my Denver Broncos is when you look at Garrett Bowles, is with the loosening of the rules at the NFL level to try to make it more entertaining, they are allowing the offensive linemen to get away with some pretty egregious holds on some of these defensive linemen. And Garrett Bowles is one of the greatest benefactors of that rule change, because when you look at when they made that rule change between 2019 and 2020, Garrett Bowles went from one of the most penalized offensive linemen in the NFL to one of the least penalized offensive linemen in the NFL. And it makes no sense because his style of play did not change all that much. And so, do I think he's a good dude? Yeah. Do I think he's about average at the left tackle? Sure. Do I think he's deserving of kind of like that extra that they kind of put on his name at the NFL level? No. And I think that if we could replace him, we do better.
I agree. Ditto is my team.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah, because it is weird how we improve, because he was actually one of the guys a couple years ago. I just thought he was trash. I mean, literally, it just seemed like he didn't stop anybody. Again, all the penalties. But yeah, it's like his play improved. So you know what? That's a good point in the way, getting away with holds. And again, that just makes me think of Kansas City.
Yeah,
which
who's
seems
that?
like
Juwan
got rid
Taylor,
of
whoever?
so many holds.
Who's that
Yes.
one guy on the offensive line that jumps back like the snap count or whatever? Is that Juwan Taylor? I think it was the right tackle.
Maybe, yes.
Jeez, that drove me
It may be,
absolutely
yes.
batshit
Yeah.
crazy last season.
Yeah.
Watching him.
Yeah. But anyways, so that's just my general comment, Jack, is that the head-to-head matchup for your team and mine, from a head coaching perspective, Pete Carroll actually has the edge. So
That's
Pete
interesting.
Carroll has the edge in terms of coaching. But I just don't think that your defense is going to be where it
It's
needs
not
to
bad.
be
No.
to give Pete Carroll that advantage, if you will, this season. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not looking great because I think you're building something interesting in Vegas because you're no longer just slapping things together. You're building things with a vision, and that's what a guy
Yeah.
like Pete Carroll brings.
Agreed.
Is he's got a vision, and that's a dangerous thing for a team that has an owner who frankly wants to leave a legacy because his father left a legacy at the NFL level. And Mark Davis wants to show, I think, in my opinion, that he can cast his own shadow in the NFL and that he can do some good things too, is my opinion on that. And I think that Pete Carroll, the reason why they brought him in is because he's capable of building with vision. And for all the Raiders fans that
Oh,
are saying it's
agreed.
too early, don't say it, don't say it. It's like, I'm sorry, but he's done it repeatedly. This is not the first time he's built things and constructed things and ended up doing very well. So I'm not speaking so far out of turn when I'm making
Well, and
comments
you could
like that about Pete.
no, and I agree, and you can see what his style is again with the players that he brought in. But when you lose like 5 starters, so half your squad in one season on the defense, yeah, it's going to take a little bit longer to get there and create that depth, create that rotation for sure. And Mark Davis leaving a legacy. I mean, what's going to be interesting? Who's he going to leave that legacy to? He has no kids.
Yeah. It's probably
So
going to go to some corporate conglomerate that's going to buy the team, unfortunately. Like, that's what seems to be the norm these days. Unless you have ownership like Richie's team or the Chiefs, the Hunts, it seems like all these teams are getting bought up by corporate conglomerates, and all these family-owned teams are going to be going the way of the dodo bird.
I wouldn't be surprised somehow Tom Brady ends up, getting it.
Oh, he could probably buy a larger stake in ownership. Yeah, I'm sure there's a way for
I
that.
mean, I can see, Mark leaving, again, they got a lot of owners to this team, but the controlling interest just because of his background, I can see that.
So DZ, who's your number two?
Well, number two, oh God, I hate saying it. So my number one was Week 14, Monday night against the Eagles. My number two, most difficult, is the following week, is Week 15 at Kansas City, and it's an early game. It's a 10 a.m. for the Chargers. Whatever Central Time is in Missouri, whatever it is. And, the Chargers haven't beaten the Chiefs since 2021. So, look, I could easily said Week 1, Week 2 and Week 3. I think that's a really tough stretch. That's against everybody in the division. But I think, everybody's coming in fresh. Week 1's, Week 2, everybody's healthy. Our Week 1 game's going to be in Brazil, so it's going to be a neutral playing field or whatever. But I looked at this and I saw, right after the Eagles is a divisional game, second one in 3 weeks against Kansas City in their house in December. It's getting cold, early start. And we just haven't beat them since 2021. And I looked at like all our matchups in the last 5 years, and they haven't blown us out but one time. There was like one game, it was like 31 to something or other, 17 or whatever. All the games have been decided by a field goal, 2 points, 6 points, whatever. They just know how to end games. They know how to finish. They know how to win. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We saw it all last season. Right? They look like crap, but they still ended up getting that W at the end of the night or end of the day. But I'm not going really too much into it like with them because like I looked at who they added and who they lost. I mean, other than losing Joe Thuney in that trade, I didn't think they really necessarily added so much. I think what they're gaining the most is getting some of these guys healthy, some of these wide receivers. I think I said this weeks ago, I predict them to be a more of a air raid kind of offense. I mean, they do run a West Coast offense, so I think their passing is going to pick up this season more so than it did last year. We'll see about that. They might, resort back to their ways, what got them through this year, but it obviously wasn't good enough in the Super Bowl. We'll see. I'm expecting us to at least beat them once this year, especially in the second year under Harbaugh. Whether it's in Brazil or in Kansas City, I don't know. To be honest, I don't really care where. Just need to get the W. Somebody's got to take these guys down. We'll see, but yeah.
I just wonder, how healthy Simmons is going to be their first overall draft pick. Which, when we did our mock draft, that was the first player I took.
I think,
or not after, or I should say, the second round is when I got him.
I think I saw something somewhere that he's going to be ready by camp, ready to go, which is going to be pretty impressive because if it does pan out, that's going to be a major steal for them. Getting that tackle.
Big time.
Yeah. I think I saw something last season. Us saying they look like crap, that they had their most yards ever last season on a total offense, like 5,570 yards or something. I wrote it down, and they were fourth in points per game. So it's like, I guess we're just, what we saw didn't match up. Like our eyes didn't match up with the numbers or whatever, because they still were pretty potent last season. But yeah,
well, both your teams scored more points than Kansas City last year.
Just not when it mattered, I guess.
It's just a matter when it was clutch.
They had they were 15-2 last season. So this is this team has been a thorn in my side for way too long, man, and I just that's why I had to pick them, and it just so happens to be right after that Eagles game, which, in my opinion, is not going to bode well because I could see dudes getting banged up, nicked up, and especially a Monday night game, with all that energy. But yeah, man, I don't really got much going on them. I don't, to be honest, I don't pay attention to the Chiefs as much as I do the Raiders or the Broncos right now, because the Chiefs really haven't been making any noise, and I haven't really heard much. Their social media following I see, like on X, I barely see Chiefs fans anymore. So I don't know. They must be all hiding or something right now.
Yeah, I kind of agree. My general take on the Chiefs is that the Broncos split with them last year. I see something similar to that again this year with the Chiefs and Broncos.
It might do well for you, Richie. If they do go air raid with your defense, ooh, that'd be nice.
That'd be very tough.
That would be the Chiefs attempting to come at the Broncos' strength, which I'm not certain would bode that well. I think that would be a recipe to lose. The question then would be in the Christmas game. So we play them on the 16th. So if they try to go full air raid on, say, the November 16th game we have against the Chiefs, and then maybe lose that game, just as an example, and then come back to us on Christmas Day, which is when we play the Chiefs next, which is that'll be a game everyone's going to want to watch, like Broncos Chiefs Christmas, like those ratings will be through the roof.
Yeah, they're 0-1 on Christmas Day.
Yeah,
so that doesn't hurt either.
And so then the question is that if they try to go air raid, say on the 16th of November, and they lose, are they going to try to do the same thing on Christmas Day, or are they going to adjust how they play and maybe go either more balanced or more run and see kind of where that takes them? But it'll be an interesting matchup. I mean, I think it's fair to add the Chiefs to the list, even though I have not. And the reason why I did not add them in my list was because I kind of feel that we kind of overcame that hurdle last year with the Broncos, where we split with the Chiefs, and we have had them very close to being on the ropes for multiple games for multiple years now, and have just simply lost in bad breaks.
So have
And
we.
so,
But we just haven't got a W. I
Yep.
don't get it. Are you saying because you split with them, but wasn't
Yeah.
that against their backups, though, Richie? Like they,
yeah, at the end of the season, sure.
I mean,
But
you blew them
in
out.
the first game that we did, which is what you're supposed to do against their 2s and 3s and some of their starters. So you're supposed to do that, and we basically played like we're
Yeah,
supposed to. But let's keep in mind that the first game we lost to them, we lost by a fluke block / missed field goal, which was, painful, but nonetheless, like, that wasn't like something that if I'm a Chiefs fan that I'm sitting there saying, like, yes, that's something I'm sitting there saying, like, if I'm supposed to get back to the Super Bowl this year, I should not be squeaking by a win against a divisional rival who hasn't made the playoffs in, almost a decade, basically.
right.
And so that's why I'm not necessarily in the same boat as you when it comes to the Chiefs, is I think that Sean Payton, much like Harbaugh, much obviously like Andy Reid, and much like Pete Carroll, he's a seasoned head coach. He knows what he's doing. He's kind of got the guys that he wants in the building and has started to edit out the roster to eliminate guys that, he doesn't want here anymore. And I just think that they're a great team, obviously, because they've done so well for so long. But we basically pushed them right up against the ropes. And yes, we did beat them once last year. And yes, we had them basically in like a tough spot where we really should have won both games, and then we lost like a fluke field goal. So I'm not really that concerned with them to the same degree because we've overcome that hurdle already. So that's
I can
kind of
see
where I'm
that.
at.
And again, the way your team is playing, it's like you got to look at with Kansas City. It's like they just figure again the last drive. They figured they pull it out of their ass and they get the win. But all their games are close.
Like what was that game against them in the Bengals a few years ago? Like just winning with like no time. You know what I mean? Like just the
Oh, the
stuff that
last play.
the stuff they do in like the last 2 minutes is just unreal. Like, I mean, we could say whatever we want about Mahomes, and I get the criticisms, but kind of like the tush push, they figured out something in Kansas City, man, and it's been like voodoo magic against everybody in this division for 9 straight seasons. So,
So the number one play that I don't like in the NFL, and I'm thinking they're starting to call it, or at least allowing defenders to play defense, and this is the Alex and I actually agreed on this, although he said I'm obviously not going to complain because my team's basically winning from this, which is
Right.
Mahomes has recognized that if he fakes going out of bounds and doesn't,
yeah,
and then comes back in and gets an extra yard, 2, 3, or 10, that the refs were calling defenders for tackling him at the sideline. And so he was able to kind of double dip with the quarterback pull tuck and runs. So he was able to fake going out of bounds and then come back inbounds and get 5, 6, 10 yards extra because defenders didn't want to get the flag and hurt their team.
Yep.
The refs,
Kind of like,
the refs.
Mahomes has that play. The Eagles have the tush push. Oh, who's in the Super Bowl?
But the refs started to allow defenders to ensure that quarterbacks couldn't double dip, I guess would be the best way of putting it. They couldn't get the additional protection that the quarterbacks are afforded to ensure that the game goes well if they didn't run out of bounds. So if they ran out of bounds and were hit once their foot was on the sideline, the defenders got a call. However, if they were running on the sideline and did not get their foot out of bounds, the defenders were allowed to tackle them out of bounds. And that I agree with. I think that is a fair
agree.
way. I think that is a fair way of going about it, which is if you're going to continue to make yourself a runner and not protect yourself as a quarterback, then suffer the consequences is my opinion on that. And I want some of these linebackers to be able to tee them up like we saw from Urlacher, who I saw in an interview the other day. That dude's awesome.
No, he is really awesome.
He is
He is
awesome.
awesome. Yeah,
Big
he's
fan
my
of
kind.
Brian.
He's my kind of people. He
Yeah.
played the game, the way that I probably would play the game as well, which is reckless abandon and aim to allow the offense to remember me by name. And fear me by name. I think that's the best way of playing the game. But I think that's the correct approach. I think you afford the quarterback some additional protections to ensure that you don't get the most critical position knocked out of the game as regularly because it diminishes the quality. But at the same time, you put some onus on the quarterback to say, protect yourself too. Protect yourself
commit
too.
one way or the other.
Yeah, protect yourself as well. Exactly. Yeah. So I think we're starting to see that as a bit of a shift, if you will, in the NFL, and I think that's a good thing. And so that's great. So with regards to the Chiefs, I don't have the Chiefs as my second or my next hardest. I actually have the Chargers.
Interesting.
I have the Chargers
18
over the
or
Chiefs.
3?
Pardon me?
Week 18 or week 3? Or
18.
just okay? Because we might be onto something here.
So I think that the last game of the season between the Broncos and Chargers, there's a reason why it says TBD.
TBD.
There's a reason why that says TBD, okay? Like the league already knows, I think, that the AFC West is going to likely shape up to be a
They're
pretty
fighting for something.
Yeah, and I could see that being a flex game. I could see that being all sorts of stuff because I think that the Chargers and the Broncos are going to be in that upper tier of the playoff. Yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty savvy battle there near the end. My Broncos play the Chiefs and the Chargers to end the season. So 17-18, Chiefs, Chargers. Christmas Day.
Play the Chiefs first, beat each other up before you come to
And so I believe the Chargers are an improved team. I think they have a great running room. I think that bodes well as a counter punch, if you will, to my Denver Broncos. I think that the Chargers are going to have a lot to play for in that game. I think the Broncos will as well. So I think you're going to get an elevated version of both teams. And if I'm going to be honest, when you look at how the Chargers played the Broncos this past season, the Broncos did not do well against the Chargers. The Chargers beat the Broncos both times last year.
Yeah, but you guys did really well. I think it was that second half for that last game. That was like that game. I was like, oh God, here we go.
I will give my team credit that we started to figure some things out.
We barely,
right?
yes.
Yeah. Like I agree. Look, I agree. But the point being is that you did win.
Sure.
And it was a tough game. Both games were tough. They were both that kind of like aggressive style football, which I personally like. Like that, I just think they're just great games. And so those are the types of games that I think that my Broncos will struggle with this year because they don't have the same grit and they don't have the size. They don't have that aggression.
We'll see late in this. Who knows who's around at weeks 18 or whatever.
True.
I think what's going to be the funnest aspect of your guys' game from the outside, looking in, is going to be DZ's running game with that big offensive line against Richie's smaller defensive front. So again, I wouldn't want if the Chargers to try to go head to head on your no fly zone for your defense, but I want to see what the running game looks like for that game.
So do I, man. So do I. Everybody's saying it's going to be good. We just don't know yet. That's the thing. It's just everybody's like, oh, the running game is going to be much improved. Well, I don't know yet. We're projecting right now, so
Well,
we'll see.
I think it's
I'm actually
fair though. Like,
sure.
let's give some credit where credit is due to your head coach, right? Which is
Sure.
he has a proven track record of being we'll call it well above average running coach, like as in running the football. Like he has a pedigree, he has tape
Yeah.
where he has done those things, right? So I just think that it's kind of selling your team a bit short, especially after the moves that you made this offseason by saying I'm not sure. I think you can go in with a bit more confidence with the fact that you have again a vision from a competent leader in Harbaugh. And I say that because I think that you got a jaded fan base after going through the Staley years.
We have
Where
a jaded fan base in general,
Yeah.
but you're right. You're very right.
Right.
Our fan base is fractured into many different subgenres and subgroups right now.
Right. And so
yeah,
my point being is much like Jack's Raiders and my Broncos and obviously the
this is
Chiefs with
gonna
Andy
be
Reid.
this is gonna be a great game as well.
Yeah. But the point being is we all have head coaches that are leaders that have visions that have proven to work.
Sure. Yeah.
And frankly, that's a scary thing for one division to have four guys that are.
It's a good thing, and it is scary. Yeah. This is popcorn. All year, all season.
Right.
Popcorn and beer, but their caveat. You're talking about Harbaugh, and to be fair, this guy gets his fair amount of criticism, especially last season and from the Ravens fans. But our OC, Greg Roman, his whole claim to fame is, he's been attached to Harbaugh's hip when he's been in the NFL since he was in San Francisco. But Greg Roman's claim to fame is his running game, And last season with LA, it was his worst statistical year. It was nothing on par of what they were looking or wanted to be at. And I think that had to be, due to many factors. It had to do with that Justin Herbert coming out of camp with the torn plantar and whatnot, in his foot, and just O-line chemistry, running backs, whatnot. We didn't even just a whole plethora of issues, right? So, if this running game can get to where they want it to be, sure, I'm excited. I'm more at the point, being a long time jaded fan. Sure, yeah. It's just prove it. Show me, right? Let me see some of this first, before I jump all in and just be like, oh yeah, this running game is going to be awesome or whatnot. And to kind of counter that is this passing game needs to be a hell of a lot better this season than it was last season. There was one guy that Justin could rely on to catch the damn ball last season, and that's unacceptable. Jack's team, that Raiders offense, has a plethora of weapons, especially heading into this season. Bo Nix in Denver, awesome wide receiver room. Young, promising running back in R.J. Harvey. Evan Ingram said, "See you, LA. I'm going to go to Denver." And then watch out. We got the Chiefs with that. Rashee Rice coming back. Say what you want about the guy. I think he could have lost a season for his actions, but NFL doesn't seem to care about stuff outside the game, it seems like. But he's electric. So I'm more excited about the passing game, see how that develops in LA. I don't want to say more, maybe equally, right? But that game, I'm glad you brought that game up, Richie, because I have a tie. So we'll get into it when it's my turn. But I have a tie with my last difficult game.
Yeah, so I just see a few matchup challenges between the Broncos and the Chargers.
I
It's
see
just-
matchup challenges against that secondary, man, and the speed on that defense that the Broncos have. So it's like, I mean, Lad's no secret. You know, I could see Surtain or I could see Barron right on it, depending on where he lines up. You know, we're expecting Jade to be, you know, have a stud rookie year. So some of these guys, these other guys that they brought in this year, have to step up. And I sure as shit better not see Justin throwing to QJ like something I'm going to talk about my next team.
So that's where I'm at with my second game, and then I'll kind of go my last game, which is going to be in my top 3, but it's number 3, right? So I had Chargers number 2, Eagles number 1 as my hard, and then my number 3 is I had a hard time with this one actually. This was actually my number 3 was actually the hardest one for me to select from all of them. And I'm probably going to go with the Packers.
Wow, we don't play the Packers.
Yeah, neither do the Raiders.
And I'm only going to select the Packers because we struggled with them in the past. I think we've traditionally done fairly well with the Commanders, and we certainly played competitively against them. And I think that we, in my opinion, match up better against the Commanders. Just generally speaking, because edge rushers getting pressure, that sort of thing, allows you to help contain running quarterbacks. And the Commanders are not quite as gritty, for example, as the Packers have proven to be kind of over the last couple years. And so it was really a tough one for me to pick between the Commanders and the Packers, but I have to probably go with the Packers just because I don't have recency to show that we have been able to handle them with their new quarterback.
And they've added a plethora of stuff as weapons as well. And
Yeah.
I think that's going to be, you know, when you said the Packers, like immediately I got flashbacks of my childhood because there were so many iconic games between the Broncos and Packers when I was growing up. And I was just like, just remember Brett Favre and, you know, just, I think it was John Elway.
Yeah.
Going head toe to toe with each other. Man, I'm kind of glad you said that. That's a game. I hope that my game's not on at the same time because I'd love to watch that game. It's should be a really
mid-afternoon on the 14th of December.
And you know, the whole NFL and the whole Packers fan base can thank Brandon Staley for making Jordan Love a thing, in my opinion. Jordan Love was absolute dog water until he played the Chargers against Staley's supposedly vaunted defense and then flipped a switch and became now their franchise quarterback. But, you know, Josh Jacobs, ooh, good running back.
He's good.
He's really good. Yeah, man, that'll be a good game. That'd be a really good game.
That is interesting because I was really waiting for you to say the Commanders.
So I play the Command. Do we all play the Commanders? Okay. So
Yeah.
It was tough. I'll just say they're an honorable mention. I have 2 teams that are honorable mentions, and they're on that list.
So kind of, you know, just so, you know, since you guys were talking your teams, you know, head coaching, do you guys know what Harbaugh versus Peyton record is?
No, I don't know that one. I know there was a lot of stink between Carroll and Harbaugh, but I don't know that one. So
Jim Harbaugh's got a 3-1 record against Sean Payton. And then for our teams, that's what I've been doing. I was kind of looking this stuff up because I just found it very interesting. So I was glad Richie brought that up.
I think Pete has the edge, right?
No, Harbaugh and Pete Carroll So Harbaugh has the edge. He's 2-1 in college, but Carroll has the edge at 2-1 in the NFL.
Okay, yeah.
And Andy Reid's got all of them.
Oh,
So
Andy's spanking all that ass, man. He's been doing it for a long time.
yeah, Pete Carroll versus Andy Reid. Andy's got 7 wins. Pete Carroll's got 5.
Yeah, I would think it would go what, Andy, Pete, Sean, Jim, in that order. I mean, it probably goes that order because Jim's only one in there without a Super Bowl as well.
I think the only reason why it goes in that order is actually because Sean has a Super Bowl and Jim doesn't. I think when you actually look at the total records, I think Sean has traditionally struggled against all 3 of those coaches, although I do think Sean may have a winning record against Reid.
That's the only one I haven't looked up. Haven't gotten to that one yet.
Check that one out.
I think Sean and Reid may have closer to an
NFC
even record,
days.
although I'm not 100% sure. Because remember when Reid was with the Eagles, they were in that same division there, and that's when the Saints were with Drew Brees and stuff, right? And so I think there's a tale of 2 divisions, I think, between the 2 teams, right?
Bingo. Bishop. You got it, Richie. It's Andy Reid's got 2. It's 2-1.
Wow. That's the Saint days against the Eagles, probably.
I don't know. I didn't look. I just looked up head-to-head, coaching matchups.
I was trying to see, Bishop, what division are you talking about?
Anyways. What's up, Willie Wayne?
But anyways, that's like I'm going off of what I remember, and I'm generally pretty good with stats and scores and numbers like that. And so I think that if you're to look at things just generally speaking, I think you have to give Sean the nod over Harbaugh for now.
Yeah.
Right, just because of the Super Bowl win and
Sure.
the Saints
I
win
agree.
record and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think when you look at win totals against coaches, I actually think that I know actually that Sean has a winning record against Andy Reid, but then Sean has a losing record against Pete Carroll and Jim. And so it really does kind of mess the whole the number game up, right?
The algorithm.
The algorithm's totally thrown out of whack, right? Because it basically then says, okay, well then where do you weight the Super Bowl? And I think you have to weight the Super Bowl, up there. So then you would then basically say Andy Reid would be number 1. Then you'd probably put Pete Carroll as number 2 because I think he's got the best winning percentage then against the rest of the coaches, and he's got a Super Bowl. And then you have to put Sean Payton 3, and then you then put Jim Harbaugh number 4. But the thing is that you're literally talking about coaches that have all been to Super Bowls, been to divisional championships, won an absolute truckload of games, and have turned teams around at every destination they've ever been to.
I think Pete's the only one with a national championship and Super Bowl.
Thank you. You just took the words out of my mouth, but I was going to say Harbaugh actually went to won a national championship and went to a Super Bowl. Didn't win it, but he actually went there
too, which is that was a wild game.
That was a cool story.
Yeah.
But anyways, the point is that when you're starting to split hairs between coaches and to say, well, have they won a Super Bowl or have they not won a Super Bowl? But they went to a Super Bowl, and it's like, okay, like your team has that's an embarrassment of riches for any team to have that as a or division, actually, if we're going to be honest, for a division to start saying, how many Super Bowls does your head coach have? It's like, well, most teams are like none.
Right.
Right. Most teams like none. And we're like, well, it's 1 here and then 2 here and 3 here. And it's like, okay, like that's a pretty impressive division of head coaches that you have where you're literally comparing number of Super Bowl wins as the tiebreaker between which coach is ranked where. Like that's pretty ridiculous.
That is. It is cool though. It makes it fun.
So Jack, is it your shot, buddy?
Well, you got to go your 1A 1B for your number 3 spot there,
Oh,
Vizen.
it's on my side. Well, damn it. Well, so we'll rehash this. 14 and 15 so far. Weeks 14 and 15 have been my 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And then it goes, I think 16 we put the Cowboys. I didn't put them in there, even though I think they're going to be much improved. Like, much improved. I think people are sleeping on the Cowboys a little bit. And I hate saying that. But my 1A, 1B was week 17 and 18. And the reason I didn't pick the Broncos, that's week 18, and I picked the Texans over them. 5 touchdown high school Dudas clutch. Ooh, oh, nice. The Texans embarrassed us in the playoffs. This was a team that wasn't supposed to, they had this down year last season and whatever, Mixon over 1,000 yards. They added Nick Chubb to go along in that running back room. The game's TBD. So 17 and 18, I think it might be on everybody's schedule or TBDs right now. No? So on my schedule, 17 and 18 are both TBDs. They beat us down 32-12. Justin Herbert threw 4 interceptions, albeit, yeah. And one was a pick six. Another one set up for an immediate touchdown right after. They got Daniel Hunter, Will Anderson, both with 12. I think they had 12 sacks last year. I think Will Anderson had 11 in the regular season and 3.5 in the playoffs. Nico Collins, who knows with Tank Dell, if he's going to come back, but I think they did add some other guys. Okay, Xmas Day. They just, man, I watched a little bit of that game today and it hurt to watch it. Like, literally as a fan, like, I got like embarrassed and hurt, and I was like, this is just, they just were outgunned, outmatched, and you're just hoping that this year with their additions that's not going to happen. And especially a guy like, we've talked about this before, the criticisms for Herbert, like he didn't do himself any favors after that game. And I was really pissed off at Justin Herbert at that game. And when I go back and I look and I'm like, he did some uncharacteristic things, during that game, but he did what he thought he, should do, or what he had to do, and I was like, guys were dropping balls. He had I think he targeted QJ. There was an interception. He targeted Ladd. He got an interception. He targeted Will Dissly, who, by the way, is not known for being a pass catching guy, but he was turned into that last season. That deflected off for an interception. It was just a hot mess that whole game, and they bolstered their team this year. They added more weapons because I don't think Tank Dell's ready on both sides of the ball. So, and that's another late game before we head in, at Denver, week 18, to close out. So I had to put that, and I put that over Denver just because we talk about the Broncos, just because we're on the Wild Wild West show. And, I think they're both equally, but I'm giving them a slight edge just because of how that game went. It was bad. It was embarrassing. The Chargers scored 6 points. It was 2 field goals, and they went on like a 23-0 run for the rest of the game. So it was just, it sucked. And I'm hoping they got an answer for it this season. You can't win every game, right? But that's a game where I feel like, man, it'd be nice to, get some payback, But
hopefully they learned a little bit off of that game,
You've done two
Yeah,
things.
that's a big point differential in 4 picks. Whoever their defensive coordinator is did a great job.
They've got
I don't think I've ever heard Herbert ever throwing 4 picks in a game.
Well, he threw like, and somebody can correct me wrong, I think he only threw 3 interceptions the whole season. And then he went into that game throwing 4 or something. So, and I don't think, look, hats off.
It was
to
something
Houston.
like that. It was something like
Yeah. Houston came in there with the plan, man. They attacked that offensive line with speed, man. They really punked our tackles, who are supposed to be our strength of our team. I think somebody was out. We had a couple guys. Yeah. Well, we hope, Piano Man. We hope. I don't know. That the verdict is still out on that one. But and we didn't have a run game in that game. So hopefully that run game can carry you in those kind of games like that. And I think, Richie, you might have were going to hint to something like that.
There's 2 things that you guys have done in this offseason, which I think were in direct response to that game. Number 1, you got yourself a proper 1-2 punch in the running game. And this is the run. I had 2 things. One of them is the running game. You have Najee Harris, who is a competent pass catcher, which is an extension of the run game, as well as a runner. And you also got Amarian Hampton, who is a competent runner and can also catch the ball as well.
They say he catches better
shown
than
that
Najee.
in college.
But weren't you also DZ a shorter running back?
And
during the playoff game.
It could have been. It could have been.
But
yeah.
the point is, though, the best way to help counter a speed rushing attack or a rush attack into the backfield is to not constantly go into pass sets. And you were constantly going into pass sets because you could not run the ball.
Bingo.
So that's a huge issue. Like, it just is. I'm sorry. It's a huge, huge issue. And you also went and got Becton. And so what does a guy like Becton do? Well, he addresses your issue, actually, with regards to the middle portion of your offensive line and a weakness that you guys had at the guard position from running in the ball. And so you're talking about running between the A and B gap, right? Running between the A and B gap in the middle of the field, and then also being able to run in the C gap there between the tackle and the guard. Well, Becton allows you to do some of that kind of stuff with both Harris and Hampton. And so I see both of those moves as huge things. Huge.
I'm knocking on wood. I believe last season was the only healthy season Becton's had in his career, albeit it's not been a long one, but that was in Philly with a really good offensive line and a good running game. So if he does stay healthy for us, I'd be head over heels. Now,
well, it's also a positional change too, because like when he was on the Jets, he was the right tackle. So coming in at a guard, changing that up again, total different offensive line. Jets, Philly, one of the worst in the league to probably the best in the league.
And luckily, we're going to keep him at the same position in LA. But no, I agree, Richie. I feel like I'm like you last season, man. I just got a sour taste in my mouth, and there's a lot of hype coming into year 2, especially with who they brought in. I'm like, just show me, because we didn't beat any good teams last season except for the Broncos, and if you want to call the Bengals a good team, then them. So this schedule is just loaded with teams who have proved it, throughout seasons that they are a good team. So if you want to be known as a good team, then you need to beat these guys, and it starts with taking the division, in my opinion. But it's honor schedule. Honorable mentions, I'll just throw it right out there. Washington Commanders, boom. There's the hype for them is real. Another honorable mention I have is, and people are going to say, why did you say that? Why are you picking them? Is the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins offense is getting slept on. Especially it's going to be in Florida, and it's another early game. And there was a stretch where the Chargers didn't do so hot in Florida, so I've got those. There's so many teams. I could have just picked weeks 1 through 3 and just left it at that. Because it's 3 divisional teams. We're playing the Raiders week 2 Monday Night Football. Raiders gonna be healthy with I'm predicting a really damn good offense. Say what you want about, I don't know. I hear people saying stuff about Geno. I'm like, you're batshit crazy to doubt this guy with those weapons and with that running game that's going to be potential behind him. Even their offense line. Now it's their defense that has the question marks, but people are going to be healthy week 2. You know what I mean? So it's gonna. I could have
That's
easily
funny
done
because,
that.
normally when the Raiders play the Chargers, I'm always hoping the games are later in the year because the Telesco years seems like half the team is hurt. So I always kept rooting. I'm like, oh, get it later down the year, get it later down the road
Yeah.
to play the Chargers because when you're healthy, you're damn good. But there's always a lot of injuries, so I always would look at the schedule, when it first comes out, just to see where we play you guys. And I agree with you 100%, DZ. I got the Commanders as my honorable mention too. I mean, look at that team. That their quarterback, Jaden Daniels. How electric is that guy? Is he not the next Patrick Mahomes that's coming out?
No,
that next
I wouldn't
generational
call
type quarterback.
he.
Jaden
to me isn't Mahomes because Mahomes does these off script, plays. Like Mahomes does this, was kind of incorporating street ball into his game. To me, Jaden is that prototypical passer, like that cool, especially as a rookie in that organization. What he did last season, he had ice in his veins. Like that guy was just standing. He was in that pocket and he was just cool, calm, and just delivering rockets to his guys. He in my opinion,
it kind of reminds me of Baltimore's, quarterback.
Lamar.
Yeah, because Jaden's so fast, dude.
No.
He's so fast. No,
Sure,
he's
you can take off.
fast.
I think
But his
Jaden is
arm,
just
he's got a cannon, and
he's more of a
and like
true quarterback. I think Lamar is the most dangerous quarterback in my opinion with the ball. When he scrambling with the ball, and design runs it would be Josh Allen, right? And then Mahomes,
mhm.
Mahomes has that clutch factor. I think that last 2 minutes, and it's C.J. Stroud, Houston's guy. That kid's absolutely amazing as well. And I
Oh,
forgot
he's
to talk
fire.
about
And you look at
that's
him last year, it's even getting there, it's or no, it was the year before. He had almost with his top 3 wide receivers out.
Yep. And I watched what he did to us in the playoffs. The whole defense, they're all pinning him down. He runs that sideline and just keeps his eyes downfield and delivers a strike for 30 yards. The kid is unreal. And I forgot to mention this earlier about the Texans, is I think it's going to be in some of this order. It's Denver, Texans, Baltimore, with a top secondary. With who they've added, they're going to be fighting to see who's got that best secondary.
Yeah, they have a good secondary. That's for sure.
I see the Texans and the Commanders having very similar quarterbacks. Their styles are very similar. They are very grounded quarterbacks when playing from the pocket, and they are passing first, pocket first. But if needed, they'll run and get out and get the ball down the field, all that sort of thing. Whereas Lamar Jackson, he is underrated as a passer. I will give him that.
Yeah.
Right. I will
gotten
totally
way better too.
I will give him that. But the thing is, his default is I want to run because I'm damn good.
Sure.
Right. His default is running the ball, and then he falls back to passing the ball. Whereas your CJ and your Jalen, They are, I want to pass the ball from the pocket, and I'm darn good at it, and I can read the field, and I can do the things, and I can, all that kind of stuff. But if you force me, I will make you pay. And in some regards, that's also what Jalen and Bo Nix have in common.
And
Like that's a common thread between both quarterbacks, right?
real quick, Herm Edwards was on a show today, and I think Herm coached Jaden Daniels. I'm not 100. I'm like 90%. But
Well, I know
in college,
Antonio Pierce was, on the linebackers coach when Jaden Daniels was in Arizona. That's why there was so much hype last year about the Raiders would want to go out and get him.
So I'm right then. So, anyways, Herm was saying, that he would tell him, like, look, if your first read's not there, and this is why I think some of these quarterbacks coming in the league have success. He's like, if your first read's not there, run. And so I think, like, especially how athletically gifted some of these guys are, it throws you a curveball. Now, coming in year 2, we saw CJ Stroud have a slump, but he still, took his team to the playoffs and won a playoff game. Now we'll see with Jaden in year 2 what he can do. And we saw him progress. I mean, the hell, they beat the Eagles, right? They're in the division opponent who won the Super Bowl. We'll see how he comes up. We had your buddy Richie, the Commanders guy, on a while back, and
he's great. Yeah, he's Corey. He's fantastic.
Corey gave us great insight, and we'll see. I'm hoping for a slump, to be honest with you. Even just kidding.
I don't want to slump against your guys' team, but slump against mine. Hey, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Jack, where are you at with your number 3 in terms of the third hardest game?
So you always got to tip your cap. So first of all, again, honorable mention, Washington Commanders. Hey, Rorschach, salute, brother. Renovich, Sacktown.
I had to read that comment a couple times to get it. That's funny.
Until you win, right? I don't care how close the games are. Which with Kansas City, the games were close last year, and the Raiders were not good. So, I mean, one game they lost with 17-19, and the other was 20-27. So it's like we're getting there, we're inching, and I think we're going to take bigger strides this year based on everyone that they brought into the building. But until you win that game, then I got to give it to them. I mean, like we talked about earlier. God damn, I'm so sick of seeing this team do well and win in the division and keep, beating my Raiders. But they just seem to always do the right thing at the right time. So it's like there's that magic, that's there.
There's something, right?
There's something in the water, man. I don't know what it is. Whatever Patrick Mahomes is drinking, I wanted to give it to everybody on the team. Like whatever Max is drinking, I want Max to give it to everybody on the team. And get them both, drinking that stuff. Mix it up, man. Make a concoction. Get these guys doing that. But, we've talked a lot about Kansas City. It just seems like we just can't get it done. I think, the Raiders, when you're like a team that's not, like last year, they're not good. And that's almost like your Super Bowl because they're division champs. And just they seem like they put the effort forward, against them. And they play them better. I want to see that versus everybody, not just Kansas City. And that's why I kind of said, Richie, I'm like, Christmas Day, that was an upset. Raiders getting that win. That's why I said they're 0-1. So that might be good for you guys. But it is difficult when you just see a team that just somehow pulls it past you every time you play. So I got to go Kansas City. I mean, we talked a lot about Kansas City, so it's kind of hard to kind of talk about the matchups. But I will say, I'm liking the fact, and I think, having JPJ in there, who's a bigger center. I mean, actually, he's lost some weight. He was at, I think, 328 last year. And he said he's lost 10 pounds because he's doing the Max Crosby workout routine with them. And he's the only one. Most guys like quit after maybe a couple of weeks or a month. And he's the only one that's actually doing it week in and week out. So he made that commitment, and to be able to go against like a Chris Jones. I mean, to have a bigger center against a big boy on the inside. I think there's going to be some improvement. I think there's going to be improvement in the running game. I think the offense, their defense is kind of kept, Kansas City afloat more than the offense, except for offense. When it comes down to that 2-minute mark, they can't do anything for the whole game, but they get down to 2 minutes and they're lights out.
Yeah.
So we need 4 quarters. But yeah, I'm sick of Kansas City, dude.
Another thing something about their team is last season, I've done this for seasons, I always check everybody's, health reports and going into the game, right? Like playing the Broncos, and I play fantasy football as well, play a lot of leagues, and, I'll check the Broncos, the Raiders, something about the Chiefs. And this is why I have to give my hats off to their GM as well, just like Howie Roseman in Philly. They are consistently, unless they're not reporting stuff like crazy like other teams are, their teams seems to be always healthy, unless, and then they'll have like a few injuries here or there. But for the most part, I wish there was a way you could look it up, look at their health reports last season. They'll have like one guy on there with like a scratch on his knee. Meanwhile, I'm looking at the Chargers, and there's like guys that are like, oh, he had to go to the hospital and needs to get his leg replaced, and this guy over here is missing an eye, and this guy over here is got half paralyzed. But I don't know. It has to do with the type of players that you bring in an organization, in my opinion, and maybe they just don't report stuff. But I know there's like a rule in the NFL where you have to.
You got it. You have to report them. But it seems like I agree with you. It seems like the only position for them where these guys get hurt is wide receiver. And it almost even doesn't even matter who they bring in, because you got Patrick Mahomes throwing them the ball.
Dude, Nav, Jesus Christ. My Rottweiler did that, and it cost me $8,000 to repair his leg.
What?
Jumped off a second story balcony, shattered his back leg.
Oh, well, sorry for your puppy there, Nav. I hope your puppy is okay.
Nav said he's not hurt at all. Holy shit.
Was it? You sure it's a dog and not like a big cat? You know how they land on their feet?
Looks like a home. Yeah, definitely. You need to get some of that chicken wire up, dude. Something. Keep that dog in. Yeah, man. It's interesting. So wait, you didn't say your third, did you? Or you did?
No, I just did. It was Kansas City.
Okay.
But I am, the one interesting matchup I'm really looking forward to, because they brought him in, they signed him as a safety from the Washington Commanders, which is Jeremy Chin. Yeah. And we're hearing a lot of stuff that he may play a lot of slot, and they may actually go to, at some points, 3 safeties on the field. So since he is a taller guy, he's 6'3", and what we were talking about earlier with taller, safeties and defensive backs, again against going like a Kelsey, I am interested to see how that plays out. Last year was Polamalu going against Kelsey, and again, Kelsey didn't feel like he didn't show up in the regular season. It's like when you get to the playoffs and he showed up, but Polamalu is 6'4". So I'm kind of curious to see having these 2 tall safeties, play against a Kelsey. So that'll be a fun matchup.
I agree.
Yeah, I just saw a Matt Marinovich's. It's possible, but the thing is that Kelsey is unique, and you need someone unique to go up against him. You need someone that is capable of reading the player as well as Kelsey is good because he's quite good at it, at reading the defense. A lot of people, we said it several times on the show, Matt, I'm sure you've heard me say it before, but I'll kind of say it again just for the benefit of all. Kelsey is a former quarterback at the college level. And when you are a quarterback, you're used to being able to stand on the line, reading the defense and kind of figuring out what to do. And so what Kelsey's kind of secret weapon is assessing that defense like a quarterback, not like a tight end or prototypical tight end at least, and then being able to get himself open in that kind of latter part of the play. That's why when those plays matter the most, right? Like you see those clutch plays, Jack, you, DZ, you're all talking about them. You know, Kelsey seems to always be the guy that always comes down with it. And you're like, how is he 6 yards open? What? Like what?
Yeah, he's not outrunning anybody.
Yeah. He's not the fastest dude, but the thing is that he's reading the defense and knowing that if I wait, this amount of time, I can do this and get there and be open because our play is going to look like this and therefore I can do X, Y, and Z. Like that is why Kelsey has the stats that he does, is that he's not just a tight end. He's a converted quarterback to the tight end position, and it sets him apart. It is what it is, and there's just rare dudes that are like that, and that's unfortunately.
You made me think of something.
It's
on that too. So
yeah.
What do you Raider Nation? What do you think about this? Because I don't think this has ever been brought up for like Kelsey. So we drafted Porter in the second round, who's a converted wide receiver. So he kind of gets it in the way of like the routes running for wide receivers and so forth. Because that's what he did for 3 years. And he's another big, tall guy. He's what, 6'4", or like just literally like 6'3" and 7/8", and he runs a 4.3 40. So that would be an interesting kind of thought too, if this to kind of line him up on Kelsey as having that wide receiver background on a guy that's going to be slower and you're about the same height. So that would be kind of fun to see too.
It's possible, and that would be the type of guy that would typically go well against a tight end like that. So, for example, a guy that typically did well against the more mobile pass-catching tight ends was on the Broncos and won Super Bowl 50 with the Broncos was Aqib Talib.
Ooh, Aqib.
Yeah.
So Aqib Talib is a good example. Yeah, he was 2 chains himself.
Yeah.
Crabtree and Talib were we'll just say not best buddies. But at the end of the day,
jewelry grabbing.
Aqib Talib was about 6'1", almost 6'2". So he was taller for a corner, and he had the speed and size combination to keep up with the tight ends, and was willing to be physical. So that's the other thing. Willing to be physical, had the size and speed to kind of keep up, and then able to be, right there with him. And so that's the type of dude that you need to go up against Kelsey.
Yeah, it's kind of that mentality. I see that more as like a chin. I don't know Porter yet because, again, I haven't seen him play. I don't know what his mentality is, but that is kind of more like a chin mentality.
That's why we got Derwin, man. He lines up on Kelsey.
Yeah.
Yeah, Derwin's a beast.
Yeah, so that's kind of all three of our kind of top 3 games there. I'm going to be honest, I see at minimum 2 of those games that I listed as a loss.
I can see it very well.
I agree too.
As well.
For my team, I see at minimum 2 of those 3 as a loss. I would not be surprised if all 3 of those are a loss for my Denver Broncos. I think you take
the Green Bay. I think you take the Green Bay one for sure.
I think let's put it this way: it's more possible this year than it was in years past, and I will grant you that. We have a competent quarterback who's coming into year 2 that I think has the fortitude to continue leveling up as he goes through his time in the league. I also think he's a very coachable quarterback, which is a huge victory for my team because you're not dealing with a quarterback who's kind of got the blinders on. And I think that's a good thing is you have this coach quarterback combination where they both make each other better, and I think that's a good thing. But I mean, these teams, there's a reason why I picked them for the top three. Is the Eagles are the Eagles, and it's just that's it. You know what I mean? Like they have a deep bench where it matters, and that's on the lines. And so, in order for you to compete against them, you have to be able to overpower or outrush their lines. And I'm just not convinced that. Let's put it this way: until I see it, right?
Right.
Until I see it, I'm not willing to give my Broncos the credit that they can overpower such a dominant force, which is the Eagles that we've seen the last few years. Not just last year, last few years, right? Like, this is not just like a one-hit wonder sort of thing. We've had, these stacked years from the Eagles for their, 3-4 years now at least. And so then I also had the Chargers, this gentleman's team right here, DZ. Harbaugh's in town. They put a very formidable team on the field. I think that Harbaugh has a very grinding, gritty mentality to the way he likes to run his teams. And I don't necessarily see this as a Sean Payton versus Harbaugh issue. Like, because Harbaugh is more, we'll call it defense, and then Payton's more offense. I see this actually.
Man, I love this. Thank you for sharing that. I did not know that.
Yeah. My issue with the Chargers is actually more Vance Joseph. I think Vance Joseph has really struggled to adapt to how Harbaugh runs his team and what he does and how he does it and that sort of thing. So that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, because last year, the games between our two teams, something was different about your guys' defense. Albeit it was still really good, it wasn't like the previous years, in my opinion. Like, there was a couple years ago, we played the Broncos, and every play, they were out hitting. They were, like, outpacing everybody, and they were just smothering us. And I'm like, oh my God. And then last year, I was like, this is different, and I like it, but whatever.
Well, and I'd say the same thing for your team, DZ, as well, too. I mean, last year I saw your team totally take a step forward in the middle of your defense, which, from years prior, I mean, that was the obvious weakness. So yeah. I saw your team and the health. There's a big difference for your team when you're missing 4, 5, 6 guys every single year. And then you got to rely on, your backups where you had a healthier season. And it's like, your defensive tackles, they played better. And I would say the same thing for Richie's team. I mean, dude, that Broncos defense is so stout. That's why I said it could be the number one defense. Again, the Eagles right now, but I got the Broncos number 2 in the entire NFL.
It's also depth, man. And you'll see it with your guy with Spycheck, what they were able to do, and it kind of ticked a lot of Charger fans off, that they didn't go out and get some splashy names. I'm sure they tried, but they're probably hamstrung by maybe ownership, or maybe they have, a certain amount they want, to get. But last year they brought in depth. They were cap strapped, and then this year the guys they signed, they brought in, they didn't, nothing was flashy or no big signings, but, I think on that front, people are kind of confident, like, okay, if so-and-so goes down, we got this guy to come in. Yeah, sure, it's not going to be great, but it can get us through, maybe 4 weeks or something like that. That's what
I'd call teams are not run
for a pickup.
Say that again, Richie.
The best teams are not run by continuously bringing in splashy offseason moves. The best teams that consistently get there or win, if you will. Yeah. They are typically won by drafting well, developing depth through the draft and through their young players, and then selectively picking which guys are elite, and I'm using air quotes there, at their position to try to keep the best players in the building, and figure out the other guys that are, we'll call it good enough, and then they try to trade away or get comp picks for the really good guys that they can't keep as a result of
Eagles, Patriots, right there.
roster shuffles and stuff, right? And
Ravens.
so
too.
you have the Ravens that have, like, literally they wrote that book, right? The Ravens have had that as a storied part of their franchise, draft, develop, et cetera, et cetera. I think the Patriots had that for a long time, although they lost that near the end, where they just kind of they didn't have the gel that allowed the team to really succeed. Okay, so there's that. And then you have the Eagles now, like the Eagle and the Chiefs, as of late. I've also kind of really done that very well for themselves, which is the really good draft picks and the depth across their defensive line with the pass rush and that sort of thing. And so there's a reason why these teams are now perennial either Super Bowl favorites. They make it really deep into the playoffs, and or are always in the Super Bowl, is because they've got their franchise quarterback, they're drafting really well, and then they're able to maneuver themselves in order to get that draft capital. Okay,
Bingo.
Agreed.
so
100% agree.
yeah, okay,
That was good.
so that's kind of what, like, my Denver Broncos have started to draft a lot better, and we've started to develop depth, and we're starting to bring up those depth guys, and that's why you start looking at some of these dudes and you're just like, wow, they somehow got a really good wide receiver room and we didn't really see that coming. Wow, they somehow got like a really good linebacker core and we didn't really see that coming. Similarly, like the cornerback room, for example, like the cornerback room for the Denver Broncos was a weakness a little while ago, and now all of a sudden it's like they're about to cut someone who another team is probably going to bring in and may well start from the Denver Broncos in the cornerback room, right? Like that's how deep the cornerback room is.
Oh man.
So,
Not looking
anyways,
forward to that.
Hey, we got a super.
anyways, that's
It's for you, Jack.
All right, so Jack, it seems like Little Raider is doing well. However, monetarily, the family is not. Devin is headed back to work. Please plug the show tomorrow, 9 Eastern. We will all fundraise to help him out. Hey, everybody out there, Nab, everyone knows Nab's my boy. So, Raider Shield family, everyone be there tomorrow night.
Be there,
My
be
boy.
square.
Cool. So just to bring that back up again, Raider Shield family with an exclamation mark is in fact the channel name on YouTube. Go ahead and check them out. Nav there is Jack's backup when he decides to take a day off and not join us. So one of these days you will see Nav on the show. That'd be kind of cool to have him on as another guest. Next week, Nav, I might reach out. I might have you on the show as we're still seeking to get a Chiefs guy. I might have you on to kind of join Jack just as another guy on the show to kind of add some additional
Oh
insight.
man, I was hoping you'd have one of them put on a red T-shirt and pretend they were a Chiefs guy.
Oh, hell no.
No, I know better than to ask things like that, DZ, although there would be some humor in that at some point. But anyways, with regards to that, guys, I thought there's a really interesting concept for a show to kind of look at, the worst games, if you will, right? Like so many people like to look at everything from such a positive perspective and saying, my team's coming into this and we're 17-0, or, something crazy like that, right? But
Hey, Nab, what if we did like a Kermit the Frog, like it was Halloween? Did Kermit the Frog.
But anyways, I thought it was a cool show. I thought it was interesting to kind of look at things from a slightly different perspective. Next week we'll have some other interesting topics to kind of bring up and go through as a and then you woke up. Yeah. Look, I realize Vegas is full of drugs, but you got to lay off those things, man. It'll kill you. So, anyways, guys, until next week, where the West Side is the best side, we're gonna jump right into things and go into some additional topics. Check out our Twitter for updates on different news and all that kind of stuff across the AFC West. This is around the time of year where you typically see those late signings that you weren't expecting.
Yes.
So keep an eye on that, and we will chat about that more. Until next week, peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute, work